I don't know what's going on, guys. I don't know if that's what's happening. It's a technically good connection, and it was giving me all kinds of weird signals. I don't really understand it. I don't know what happened. Nothing was working though. So it was the actual internet for the house. We hope we're back. We hope we're back. I'm not getting the same um signal I got. It's sad, very sad. Yeah, yeah, really big pain in the ass. Um, I've noticed Scott Adams can even do like he can trick it out himself now. He can start talking, he'll say words like election 2020 CIA and it will start glitching. Like he will tell you it's happening and then it happens. So he's reproduced it a few times. I don't know. I mean, it seems kind of like weak to be worried about my 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. But here we are. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Uh, Not looking good. Not looking good. It's very sad. Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, it's pathetic though. Right. Well, but that's our theme. Okay. So the good news is it's part of our theme. So let me tell you, I'm a little out of order here. 90 plus people in Rumble don't know you're live again. Shit. Um, yeah, I don't know how to get the AI, the Rumble feed going again. That's my problem. Um, I can only set it up beforehand. So, I don't know what to do about the Rumble connection. I have to use those stream keys. I'm not going to be able to go on Rumble. I can't figure that out. I can't. I can only do it from this software, but beforehand. I don't know how to plug it in. I don't think. Let me try one other thing. No, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. Watching some people live, YouTube free life. No, I know that, so I'm hearing here that yeah, I don't want to make people have to watch it on. Um, we're on X though as well. We're on X right now, so it's not just what's going on Rumble. Rumble, it like as much as I love it, it's shit software, so it's got to get better. Like there is no just you know, I can't just go live like I can with X or YouTube. I have to redo. I have to input it in Rumble first, then bring the keys over to this software and then do it. Whereas everything else just I just hit a button and it goes. So anyway, boring, boring motherfuckers. All right, where was I? So our theme, let's run into our theme. Our theme, as I had written it, was the legacy media's legacy is all the broken brains. And we can see it. So we had all these Trump derangement syndrome things and all these new headlines about dictator and what's going on with that. Um, but here's what I saw, right? And this starts with what Tur Demeester said, right? So Tur Demeester yesterday tweeted the following. He said, and this is a good sign for Bitcoiners, I think. Let me find the quote. So, what did Tur say? But all eyes are on, in the case of world leaders, all eyes are on Bukele. In the case of corporate leaders, all eyes are on Saylor. In the case of central banks, all eyes are on Tether. In the case of brokerages, all eyes are on Fidelity. So basically, everyone is looking at the Bitcoiners now. And what that means in many ways is that the, let's say, competition, right? The competition now, because it's a straight race, right? We're in a straight race, Bitcoiners versus the world. And so we're in a straight race and we don't have the numbers, but what we've been saying here for a while is that our major advantages, we have the skills, we understand the war that we're in, and we understand the weapons of this war. They're both economic and psychological. And so we understand the battlefield, and that's a major advantage, right? Because there's people out there who still think the news is straight, right? And those people will just continue to have broken brains. You see it all around you, right? These are the folks that are going to continue to just not be able to adapt to the world around them. And we can sort of start to see that, right? And the adaptation of being in this fight, even not just the followers, but the people who are trying to lead all of these NPCs down a certain path, are running out of skills, right? So War Clandestine made this astute observation. He said, "We're in crunch time now, right? This is the moment where we're going to get to see, you know, all the chips are going to come down, all the chips are going to be on the table, and this is it, right?" So what he writes is, "We are approaching crunch time. Trump is trending win big to win 2024. Biden's approval is plummeting. Moderates are leaning red. The establishment knows this. If the status quo remains, they will lose. They have to change the status quo, and soon. Only question is how, right?" So here's what I see. And when I see Lizard Cheney coming around, and then of course we had Hillary Clinton yesterday. Hillary went to the big global warming thing and said that we're cataloging deaths now, right? That we're attributing deaths directly to the global warming thing, right? You had John Kerry there talking about getting rid of coal power altogether. No more coal, right? So you get John Kerry over there saying no coal, and Tucker Carlson covered it yesterday, right? Saying like, look at John Kerry, presidential nominee, climate czar, going over there saying, we got to end the coal. Now, everyone in the world knows that that's not possible. It's not true. It's disingenuous. It's a lie. It's spin. It's impossible. It's fake. It's anything you want to call it, right? So anyone who is simultaneously out there saying, "Oh, get rid of coal," right? We got to get rid of coal in America. um, None of this is real. And because we're up against people who would just lie and just try and pretend and make up all these stories, it ends up being a pretty big advantage for us, right? Because when everyone's looking to the people who are actually leading, like BlackRock and the ETF, and in the case of Bukele in El Salvador, at a certain point, right, reality starts hitting, and you can't ignore it any longer. So Bukele yesterday, now that everyone's looking at him and he's doing great, and everyone's paying attention to how well they're doing, he wrote a little uh, um, he wrote a little piece against the folks who have been lying and saying all these things about El Salvador. So what did he write? Right? He said, they've been predicting for years that El Salvador is going to go broke. Let me get the actual quotes here. So they've been saying for years El Salvador is going to go broke and we don't have any money. And it was so stupid what we did with Bitcoin. What are we ever going to do? So he says El Salvador's Bitcoin investments are in the black. After literally thousands of articles and hit pieces that ridiculed our supposed losses, all of which were calculated based on Bitcoin's market price at the time, with the current Bitcoin market price, if we were to sell our Bitcoin, we would not only recover 100% of our investment, but also make a profit of $3 million. Of course, we have no intention of selling. That has never been our objective. We are fully aware that the price will continue to fluctuate in the future. This doesn't affect our long-term strategy. Nonetheless, it is important that the naysayers and the authors of those hit pieces take back their statements. The responsible thing to do would be for them to issue retractions, offer apologies, or at the very least acknowledge that El Salvador is now yielding a profit, just as they repeatedly reported that they were incurring losses. If they consider themselves true journalists, they would report this new reality with the same intensity they reported the previous one. We'll see. Stay tuned. Now, Rumble still has way more viewers than YouTube. Bummer. Well, there's nothing happening on Rumble now, guys. It ain't coming back. So there you go. But now, what Bukele is saying here, right, is actually an impossibility according to everyone who gathers here this morning. These are not honest people. They're not going to say, "Oh, shit, I got it wrong. Ah, damn." Right? Bukele, you were right. We're up against people like Phil Bump, right? So Phil Bump wrote an article yesterday. Now, we understand who Phil Bump is here, right? We've been talking about Phil Bump for a while. Who's Phil Bump? Well, we understand what Operation Mockingbird is. We understand that there have been brainwashers employed openly by the federal government for years now, right? So the brainwashers, and so we're going back to crunch time, right? So they got Liz Cheney out, they got John Kerry, they got Hillary Clinton, right? What I'm saying now is this is what they got. This is their plan. The plan to stop Bitcoin and to stop all of us is Phil Bump, Victoria Nuland's husband. Uh, it's the guys in saying that there's no more coal power plants, right, which everyone's going to ignore. So here's an article, Phil Bump, who we understand to be 100% in the bag and a propagandist and a brainwasher and part of the Hogwarts school of misinformation. He wrote an article saying how Donald Trump uses dishonesty, the fear of a looming Trump dictatorship. And so right away he says, you don't need to know a lot about Donald Trump to have a broad understanding of what motivates him. So you don't have to know much, but I can brainwash him. I can mind read him is what he's saying, right? I know what his intentions are. That's what Phil Bump is saying, right? I know what Donald Trump is thinking. He's saying you don't have to know a lot about the world to know what motivates Donald Trump. And he knows, Phil Bump knows, right? He knows. He has this special ability, goes right into his mind and says, look at what he's thinking. Wow, I just read his mind. It's perfect. It's like a book inside. I just pop his skull off. Inside are all the words, all in English, luckily, right? It's all written in the Roman alphabet. You can just look right in there, right? So he says, you only really need to know that he is someone who spent decades running a private company focused on selling real estate in Europe. That's all you need to know. All you need to know about Donald Trump is that he was a real estate guy. And so look at how pathetic this is, right? He says, he was someone who had dictatorial control. Here they are trying to mix this dictator word again and again. He's a dictator because he owned his company outright privately. That's what they're going with, right? A business operating in an industry renowned, particularly in that place, for its dishonesty and misrepresentation. So he was a dictator in a business that's known for misrepresentations, right? Trump spent years trying to get people to buy gold-plated condos, apartments gilded with veneers of luxury and class. He spent years trying to get lots of people to buy lots of things, really with allegations of fraud lingering around him and his company for much of that time, right? But he was never more successful at parlaying dishonesty into investment than when he embraced a career in national politics. So remember what they're trying to tell you years ago, right? That Donald Trump was so stupid that he couldn't possibly win. Now he's such a good liar that they can't stop him, right? Too stupid, too good of a liar. So they had to change their story. It didn't work. Now, again, I look at Phil Bump with these fake articles, right? Look at the mind reading in the end, right? In the end, he says, it's as though the New York Real Estate Board had come to think that it was more broadly profitable to claim that every new apartment in New York City requires gold-plated appliances and fixtures, or really that they were afraid to say his apartments didn't need those things. There's nothing new about Trump's dishonesty, of course, but given the extent to which it is taken for granted and given his current position in the 2024 Republican field, it's useful to remember not just what the falsehoods are in common, but how we use them to build power. So Phil Bump out there. And what I'm trying to tell you is I think this is all they've got. Now they can try and blow them away. They can go to the killing route, right? I can see that coming. When War Clandestine says it's crunch time, we should expect something else. We should, right? I don't want to say that there isn't. I mean, they went with COVID last time to switch the rules for voting and all that stuff. So I continue to say there is another big story out there of manipulation, something like banning elections, something like assassination, right? We're not quite there, but if it looks like the path that we're on, they are trying their best, and these are really their ideas. These are not mistakes or I think this is their best effort. It gets even better, right? So all this Phil Bump thing, and they're going to run a full court press running the dictator scam. Mike Benz has underlined exactly what this dictator dirty trick is, right? The dirty trick behind the dictator framing. And he's saying they're laying the predicate to set up a Transition Integrity Project 2.0 network with informal backing from the national security state to topple said dictator using democracy promotion regime change tricks. So again, we're in the world of what America exported to everyone else is now coming home. We're dealing with the very thing we did to other countries. So there's a bit of poetic justice in all of this, but we still have to get through it. Right? These are still weapons and tactics. Yesterday, Mark Dice mentioned the book publishing thing, right? The Mockingbird use of books and published literature. And again, here, I think Mark Dice has caught one of the most feeble attempts at pushing back against Trump and what's going on. This is the Brian Stelter book. You know, Brian Stelter. I'm Brian Stelter. I used to work for CNN, and I was sure that Donald Trump was the worst thing that ever happened. He's a dictator and he's mean and his tweets are the worst and he's not polite to anyone. How can we have him as president? And so he wrote a book. Brian Stelter wrote a book. What did he get? He got the typical Mockingbird treatment. He got days on mainstream media. So he goes on to MSNBC seemingly all day. He was just in the background and they brought him in every now and again. He even went back on CNN. They didn't talk about him getting fired there, but he went on about this book. He got a book launch party in New York. Everyone was there. Mark Dice gave the details on exactly what the publishing industry means to the Mockingbird Project and persuasion and brainwashing. He says, books, this is directly from the Church report, which I've read to you guys before, I think on Spaces, though. I don't think I did this in our typical version, even though this is no longer our typical version. We're on our second broadcast here. But here's what we know from the Church Commission. Remember, the Church Commission was the investigation into the CIA's actions in America in the 1960s, right? So what was going on with the Gulf of Tonkin, what was going on with the Vietnam War, what was going on with all these forms of persuasion back then. And so what they found out, and in the report, they wrote the following: books differ from all other propaganda media, primarily because one single book can significantly change the reader's attitude and action to an extent unmatched by the impact of any other single medium. This is, of course, not true of all books at all times and with all readers, but it is true significantly often enough to make books the most important weapon of strategic long-range propaganda. And so they show what they do here, right? They get books published, distributed, and they do this by covertly subsidizing them. So sometimes the writer doesn't even know that they're part of this, right? You remember the Cassidy Hutchinson, this girl who said she saw Donald Trump try and take the steering wheel of his limo. Right. It's a very good visual, but it's fake. There's no way a president can like jump in front of the seat of his own car and try and turn the steering wheel. That whole book was based on it, right? And if you remember, Lawrence O'Donnell had her on MSNBC trying to pretend that she would become the most famous person in America, right? Today, this morning, he did this big dramatic intro. Cassidy Hutchinson went shopping for a jacket. It was the last time she could ever be out in public because she's about to blow the whistle on America's worst dictator ever, right? So they pump her up. I couldn't find you a single person in America who knows who Cassidy Hutchinson is to this day. So again, you have the media just getting it wrong, like completely. The book, so in the end, we know how many sales, after all this effort that Brian Stelter got. Do you know how many sales he actually turned in? 3,087. He sold 3,000 copies of his book. It was fake from the start, right? But it gets better, guys. It gets better. The news keeps coming in. Yesterday was a great day. So while it could be crunch time coming, right? We could be screwed. There could be some new fake virus or a bomb or something really bad, right? A terrorist attack in America planned, like a 9/11 style scale, but truthfully an inside job, right? That's all possible. Um, so but the good news is, right? Even in Canada, the CBC having to now fire 1/10 of its staff because they have no money. No one watches. Who cares? I mean, it's not diminishing the CBC in Canada won't make that much of it. If you guys don't know what the CBC is, imagine the worst parts of the Washington Post, and then the IQ is even lower. Like Phil Bumpus, and Brian Stelter, way too talented to be in the CBC. I mean, way too talented, right? And they're the best they got in the United States. So we're talking about an order of magnitude lower of IQ and ability and talent. You should go and look at some of the broadcasters on the CBC. We're talking about absolute sludge people. Ugly, disgusting, stupid, not smart, can't make an argument, just doing the old arrogant, like, look what these people are doing. It's the same thing every day, right? It has never changed. I haven't consumed Canadian media, let's be honest, in 20 years, right? I can't. Not even 20 years, forget it. My whole life, I can't. It's always been the worst. It's always been a joke. It's always come across as lower IQ version of what's already low IQ in America. So it's absolutely it makes me, sick to my stomach to even see some of these people on a screen. So I've never consumed it. I don't really know what's going on, other than I hear it parroted by Canadian NPCs who are not even at the level of American NPCs in some ways, right? Now, I've been proud of Canadian NPCs before, right? They've done a few things. They saw through the lies a few times, right? I loved that during the truckers thing, the Canadians noticed before anyone that the Nazi flags were a plant and they were from these types of deep state actors. Americans sort of missed that coming in the January 6th thing. Canadians got there first, so we can do okay stuff sometimes. But the point is that the enemies now, right? And if this is indeed crunch time, the news is great. The news is great. They can't do better than this, I don't think, unless it is a huge, huge thing and they go and kill someone and all that stuff. But otherwise, it looks like it's going to be the um, the Bitcoiners. It looks like the realignment is happening, right? It looks like we're going to be able to see things in terms of where does your information come from? What are your information sources? And of course, Bitcoiners have this tremendous ability that we can laugh. We can literally laugh at people for believing the news, right? Imagine, like, who do you, where do you, who did you get that news from? Who do you listen to? You listen to them? You listen to Andrew Ross Sorkin, right? You listen to mainstream American news. You read the Atlantic, and you think you have an opinion, a qualified opinion, right? No, the idea that we were ever in some form of debate is now being lost in us. I put it in my book, of course, the Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management. Right? You don't argue with these people anymore. That was 2020. That was 2016, where we believed that there were people who had various opinions, and we were just out there arguing our opinions, and whoever had the best opinion was going to win. Right? We used to think that, right? But now, as Bitcoiners, of course, we understand that incentives are everything, that systems are everything, that people will lie and believe it if they need to. So we understood far better what the fight was really about. And we understood immediately that information sources and the mimetic mantra of Bitcoiners to verify, don't trust, right? Don't trust, verify. And that does not mean do your own research, right? I do not want to go into this realm where, because I'm angry that these losers have destroyed our ability to access information from credible parties. They've destroyed the dialogue, the public dialogue. They've poisoned it with all of this fake spin and bullshit, right? So you should never be wanting a society where you do your own research. That is a bad look. We are incapable. We have to embrace specialization. Specialization isn't going anywhere, right? We need it. As Bitcoiners, look, the whole thing doesn't work unless we are a highly sophisticated economy with tons of specialization. Because if that's not the case, you can just trade your eggs for someone's fucking beef and we'll be done with it, because we'll be living like agrarian, very basic society. Now, I do believe a lot of people should grow their own food and we should decentralize the electrical grid and we should have some skills outside of our specialization. But I don't want to be in a world where we aren't specialists anymore. Being a specialist, being specialized in things is the heart of our capitalist system. And Bitcoin works better when people are specialists in journalism and science or whatever, right? Inventors, entrepreneurs. We are better if we're all good at one thing and we share those things and we have a system, a financial system that allows us to monetize our skills and our talents and trade them for other things in a generally accepted medium of exchange and unit of account, right? So Bitcoin is better when we're not asked to do our own fucking research. I don't want to be in another pandemic and I can't trust anyone around me, the people who spent their lives training to do this kind of thing, and I can't trust them. Now, you shouldn't trust them blindly, obviously, right? But we are entitled to have resources from other people's skills, and we should have a system that's incentivized well enough so that you get there honest, unvarnished, uncensored, um, um, spun ideas, right? Now, I get there'll always be a selfish motivation. We don't need to make humans inherently better, right? Satoshi accepted us for who we are, right? As dishonest, selfish, sinners, and he created a system that still worked, that forced us into competing to tell the truth. We can actually mimic the incentive structure of Bitcoin throughout the economy so that science works better, so that the news works better, so that all of these things work better, and that's where we're headed, right? That's exactly where we're headed. So again, I see in the comments, Narwhal Tacos saying that in 2024, we predict that we learn elections can't be trusted, therefore must postpone them until we fix them. Yeah, I think that might be one way to go. But again, Bitcoiners are going to be in a very, very strong position here. Remember, we're in a world of persuasion, of predictions, of track record, right? We're up against the Elizabeth Warrens here who are trying to now tell you that sandwich companies are the cause of inflation, right? So, so we do have, something we're working against, a brainwashing force that we're working against. But at the same time, our expertise in understanding systems, system design. Remember, the category of economics that Bitcoin is a part of is actually a subcategory of engineering, right? It's the choices made by people to perpetuate a decentralized system, to grow the engineered network of the system. That's called crypto economics. That's a subcategory of engineering, not a subcategory of economics, right? It's just economics, like it's just decisions that people make in their heads to do this or that. And so Bitcoin is actually built off of a subcategory of engineering. And it's this engineering design that allows Bitcoin, it's the proper calibration of the incentives that allow the physical network to grow and be engineered in a way that is a feedback loop that promotes more growth and more of this network to help perpetuate it, right? So we can mimic that same um, um, information distribution system within news, within all kinds of stuff, energy systems, the grid. We can mimic everything we learn from building decentralized systems in Bitcoin into the rest of the world. And in fact, by having the money organized the way Bitcoin would do it, it would actually be a very simple matter to recreate all of these industries in the image of Bitcoin. And so that's where we're headed, right? So the only people that can stop us now are the people that would keep this engineered network from growing, both for information. It's the people who would shut the stupid YouTube off, right? But that's their best bet. Like, that's what they got going on, right? They can't run on track record, right? That's not going to work. They can't run on their predictions, which were all stupid and false, right? Here's what Balaji says, and this is part of the good news again, right? He says, why does anyone believe politicians when they blame inflation on sandwich companies? Perhaps because the money printing is happening on the back end and intentionally obscured with jargon. Meanwhile, the low attention voter just sees a company raising food prices. Now, this is where things get really fun, I think, for Trump as well, right? So one of the things I predict Trump is going to do, and this is why Trump 3 is the best thing for Bitcoin, right? When you say that you predict that the narwhal tacos here, that elections can't be trusted and all this stuff. Well, one of the things that's happening with all this messaging towards Trump, that he's a dictator and all that stuff, is obviously Trump is going to do his old move from fake news. Remember, they started fake news as an attack on Trump, and Trump spun it. You remember Superman 2? You remember the Superman 2 movie where the Richard Donner one, where he goes into the chamber and he loses his powers, and then he becomes a human, but then realizes there's other Kryptonians, so he needs his powers back, and he gets them, and then he lures them to his fortress of solitude, and then he flips the lights so that he's protected from losing his powers in the chamber this time, and everyone outside of the chamber loses his power, and he crushes the guy's hand, and it's funny, ha ha ha. So Trump has this amazing ability of flipping things that way. So they're going to be calling him a dictator and all this stuff for now, right? Obviously, Trump has a perfect defense. He's being arrested and persecuted by his competitor. So what you're going to end up getting, and I think this is beautiful, and it's the perfect story for Bitcoin, is just everyone calling everyone a fascist dictator. Like, everyone, you're a dictator. No, you're a dictator. You're this. The whole thing is going to turn into you're a dictator and you're a dictator. And I think in a shit throwing fight, you can't beat Trump, right? If the fight is like throwing shit in someone's face, Trump is the world champion. No one can beat Trump at that. Nobody, right? Get into the mud and get dirty. He's the best, right? Because he'll say the thing that no one is willing to say. He'll be the rudest. He'll be the least. If you want a sense of Trump, the greatest speech Trump's ever given, if you want to see it, if you want to see the actual genius of what Trump can do, you got to go to his debate at the Fifth Avenue Trinity Church. Right, it was across the street from my old office, across the street from Rockefeller, just down from his New York City house. And this was when he was still a candidate against Hillary. And this is a what do you call it? It happens every time. It happens every election. Like this is every election they have this debate where they go to this church. They have a fancy dinner. It's a black tie thing, and they go on. Right? They debate. They give a speech and all that. So Hillary goes first, and she gives her very boring speech. And because they're in a church, right? She plays nice. Right? She's sitting there. Trump, and we're going to be president. Trump goes up and he does one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. He does a full on reversal where what was that actor again? Man on the Moon, Andy Kaufman, right? He does a Norm Macdonald Andy Kaufman move. And if you don't know what Norm Macdonald Andy Kaufman moves are, it's to make the audience itself uncomfortable by speaking various truths or doing awkward things. Andy Kaufman would just not speak for 10 minutes and the crowd would go nuts and they'd get super angry, right? It's kind of art form. And Norm Macdonald was very good at that, right? He would bomb a set on purpose, but be consistent in the bombing of it, and it would be great, right? So um, Trump goes in front of these people and does some of the most uncomfortable things you'll ever see, right? He comes and says, Hillary's in this church. She hates you all. She hates God. She hates religion. She thinks you're all dumb, right? And she's here being polite. So they're booing him and they're booing, and he won't stop, right? The whole room, because it's so impolite, this whole room of fancy people are booing him and just angry, right? And he's just getting more and more powered and charged by it as the whole crowd turns on him. And he had a lot of practice on this because he had these Jeb Bush audiences they would stack, right? And it never bugged him, right? Having the whole audience booing him. He said, look at the special interest, right? He had figured that out already. So he goes to the church and just says all of the most offensive things you could think of, right? And everyone's angry. And what does that son of a bitch do by the end? He brings it back, right? He was able to take the audience on a ride with him. And it was mud throwing, it was dirty, it was gross, but that was the fight he was in. He was admitting what it was. Hillary wasn't willing to do that. She wasn't willing to show the actual contempt they had for each other publicly. He was, right? She was going to pretend, oh, we're just some leader. Not him. I watched that speech on repeat that whole day because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was in San Francisco the day it came out and doing some Bitcoin stuff. And I was like late for all my meetings that day because I literally could not stop watching that interview. It was the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen because it was the same skill and technique you'd see a Norm Macdonald or a Andy Kaufman use. It was the highest form of art I had ever seen political speech done in because of the rage. He had the whole crowd along with him. It was uncomfortable to even watch because of how uncomfortable he made everyone in the audience. And he wasn't saying anything that crazy. It was what a lot of us would say privately, just not in a public setting like that. So, Trump being able to do that stuff and being able to be in one of these mudslinging fights is going to be a huge advantage for him, especially when it gets into this you're a dictator and I'm a dictator and we're all dictators and it's all fascist and all that stuff. Because again, right, with Bitcoin, we're about systemic change, not about red or blue or a new party or anything like that. We actually have a system now, and Trump will be 100% right in describing it this way as just a bunch of fascist people, corporate fascists, all these kinds of brainwashers that are preying on the weak minded, that are preying on the brainwashed, that are preying on the people who have actual brain damage from reading and following the legacy media. So the good news is we're against a few wizards who I think are low skilled, dealing with a huge mass of low IQ, brain damaged people. that consume too much of this media. But what we're up against is more powerful wizards and persuaders, fewer people with the brain damage, and in fact, many of them without brain damage. So I take us. I'll take our odds, right? It doesn't look like they're going to get, other than super crazy shit. It doesn't look like they have much going for them in a way that would make us lose. All right, where to switch? Rumble and is not weird seeing two Nolans on my screen. Just one, just muted. Yeah, there you go. Agreed. We'll use the anger energy to bring social justice and equality through Bitcoin's blessings. Yeah, we're getting there, guys. All right. Well, sorry about the weird show today, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. And look, we got 70 people here from YouTube that poured it over. I appreciate your insistence to join me in the mornings like this, guys. I love it. I am as deeply committed to it as you guys are, so I appreciate it. Love these morning gatherings, and we have a good time. Thanks for both shows. Yeah. All right, guys. I'll figure out whatever the heck happened today. I'm gonna try and make sure it doesn't happen again. I think it. I mean, it might be as ridiculous as it looks. Let me just try one thing here to see where I'm at, because it did not make sense what happened earlier. Yeah, I'm still not doing great. I don't know what's up. All right, I'll figure it out. Okay, team. Peace. See you tomorrow.